I was pregnant with my first baby. We lost a huge amount of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds. It was devastating. I'd had contingencies in place. And then when the clinic closed, we need to diversify. We need to sell globally. I needed to make 5 videos a week on YouTube. We are able to collect data and create products that tailor specifically to what they want, with the ingredients they want, at the price point they want. And, it's all come because of social media, really. The rate of growth has blown my mind. I couldn't be more blessed, truly.
Welcome to the Bay HQ, where we inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians. Today we have with us Dr. Vanita Rattan, the founder of Skincare by Dr. V, a cosmetic formulator, an author, and you may follow her on social media. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for having me.
So we've had a good chat before this,
Yeah.
And we talked a bit too much. Now we need to go through the podcast. So tell me about your childhood. When you were growing up, did you ever believe in yourself? Did you ever think you'd get to where you are today?
So I am from the typical immigrant household, which I think a lot of us are. And parents generally were very strict. They had high expectations, astronomically high expectations. And really your whole life was about fulfilling the goal set for you. So I'd say it was extremely difficult. Simultaneously, I had dyslexia, but we didn't have a word for it at the time. I just thought there was something wrong with me. The words were jumbling up when I'd read them, and I just felt slower than other people. I felt like other people picked things up much faster than me. And if your parents, they've got their own expectations of you, there's not much tolerance for you not picking things up as fast as everybody else. So there's some fear there, I think. And then you associate this fear with study. And this was something that was part of my childhood. Then I went on this course, which I think transformed my life. It's Tony Robbins. I don't know if you've heard of him. It was probably one of the best things I've ever done. My uncle took us on it, and all my cousins went on it. Actually, my entire extended family went on this course. How old are you? I was 13 at the time. It was one of those formative years, where you're dying to learn something new. You really want to be the best version of yourself, but you've got these blocks and you can't figure out why you're not performing at the same level as everybody else or superseding them when you are working much harder than everybody else. So I learned some key things there. Number one was, don't worry about what other people think of you. Don't worry about what your parents think of you or your teachers. Only you know your full potential. So that had me in tears. Then the second thing was, whatever you want to achieve, find someone who's already done it. Read their books, study them, learn about them. How do they think? How do they speak? What do they wear? How do they learn their German, history, English, or whatever subject you're trying to learn? And that's what I did. I found the smartest girl in class, Heidi Evans. I don't know if I'm allowed to name her. Genius, Mensa student. I think now she's working at Harvard as a professor. And she helped me with my English. English was the thing I really struggled the most with. And she would mark my essays. She would say, tell me how to tweak them. And literally got me from a C to an A star. I did the same with everything. History, geography. I found the smartest girl in every class. And I would ask them to help me. And thankfully they did, which is why I think it's really important to help each other, is because, you really are pulling people up who need it and who are probably in pain. And once I did that, then I remember I won one of the prizes at Lady Anna Holloway School for Girls, which again was a top school. So I was in this, it was the top 4 school in the country at the time, pretty much fully Caucasian, other than, a couple of brown people. And so I didn't really fit in. It wasn't really my environment, but I had to succeed because that was the expectation. And that's why I think having high expectations of children really is important, because they will fulfill it. If you have low expectation of your children, they will fulfill that too. And so I think that's where immigrant parents go right. Sometimes not always in the best way, but having expectations that's just 4 to 10% more than what the child thinks they can do is going to stretch that child. That's my opinion of it. So that really helped me. And so then I got into medical school. And at this point, once I got my GCSEs and A-levels, and I realized that actually I was competing nationally, I got my 8 A stars, 2 A's, for example, and I thought I'm in the 0.001% of the country. And you feel instantly brighter. Just having that thing on a piece of paper to tell you, it's almost like proof in your mind. Oh, I can actually go into any room and talk to anybody, and I can read the same books as you and converse on any topic that I want to. You don't feel slow anymore. And it's almost like you need that proof just to yourself. It's not even that you go around, showing everyone else this proof, but it's just to yourself that you think, I can go and talk to anybody. It doesn't matter, how great they are, how much money they've got, what degree they have. I feel like I can converse with them. So that's why I think it's important to do well in school, to really study hard, not be distracted. As much as I hated my parents for not letting me go to parties and not let me go clubbing and doing all the other things that all the other girls got to do, I think it was the right thing to do. I think, you do get to do your partying and everything later on. And that really is the time to prove to yourself that you can achieve anything.
And with medicine, was that the expectations, or was that you really wanted to do it? No. Or where did that come from?
Well, I remember at 13 years old, I was watching Richard Branson. He was my idol. And I was like, I want to do business.
He has dyslexia as well?
He has dyslexia as well. He was my idol. I just loved everything about this man. And I want to do business, but business has high risk. And Asian parents are not going to say, go and do business when they've put all this money into education. So we came to an agreement, which was, you have to do medicine, but we will fund your first business. And so we came to like a nice understanding where I was like, okay, fine. Then it's like a win-win situation. And that's how it came about. Having said that, I think medicine was the best degree I ever could have done. I loved the degree. There just isn't anything like it. Anyone can come to you with any ailment and you'll already have a good understanding of what's happening. You can read clinical data and studies, you can figure out the best treatments that are available to you. What's better than that for me? So I think it's just the best degree.
So your first business was actually very different to what you do now, right?
My first business was medical education. So the first business I did was, at the time, there was no YouTube. Imagine, this is how far back we were. There was no YouTube. So imagine you had to go and do assessments on patients, but you haven't seen that patient before because we didn't have a very good teacher to patient ratio when it came to 400 students at UCL Medical School. So there was no video, on, say, how to assess someone with pulmonary fibrosis, for example. And so what we did is we created a video library, the first ever video library of every patient that could come up for finals that were then assessed by a registrar from that field. That didn't exist, and that was my first product. It did very well, touch wood, and it gave me confidence to think, you know what, I can see where gaps are in the market. I can bring my resources together. I can create something that people love. This is my first ever project. I wonder what else I can do with that ability. So it was almost, again, proof to myself, proof of concept that I can do business, that I can help people in areas that other people aren't necessarily looking at.
Yeah. And then, so you mentioned to me before you also had a restaurant in this early days.
Yes. So then my second business was a restaurant. It was a teppanyaki live food restaurant. And that was a mistake for me because that wasn't my area of expertise.
Yeah, I was about to say, why teppanyaki?
Why teppanyaki? I think we fell into the classic entrepreneur trap where you think because you've had something that's successful, or then you think you can almost do anything, and I can do food and I can do this. But what you forget is in every area, you have different players. And you really want to find an area of business where there are high barriers to entry. It's difficult to get into. You need to have certain set of skills in order to do it. And there has to be a need. The need needs to be enough that is worth pursuing. Now, with fast food, even though it's an expensive business to set up, the barriers to entry were quite low. And so then we were competing with a huge number of people that are probably much better than me at cooking, probably much better than me at sourcing ingredients at better prices. They're just much better than me at putting a restaurant together. And that wasn't my area of expertise. And maybe it was a very humbling experience to realize that actually, Vanita, you can't do everything. You're not going to be great at everything and you're going to fail, and learn from this. Never, ever get into a industry where these are the conditions and they're working against you. So it was a difficult lesson. At 28 years old, I was pregnant with my first baby. We lost a huge amount of money, hundreds of thousands of pounds, at a time where you're desperately saving to buy property and you're desperately saving to give financial stability to your children. It was devastating. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But I think it's something I definitely had to go through to be more prudent now.
How did you cope at the time? Because obviously lots of people talk about failure, and it's a big reason why a lot of people don't start the business, right? They're scared of this failure. But you've been through that failure, then you continue to do things afterwards. And especially being pregnant, like you said, and all of the money as well. But then how did you get through that pain? Or like even to then have the belief in yourself to then start something else afterwards? Because like you said, before you started, you're on cloud nine, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're amazing. We can start this business. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
We can start a teppanyaki restaurant. And then afterwards, like, oh, wait, now there's a very real risk that if we start something else again in the future, what about if that same thing happens again? And then how do you get out of that? So
I think because I'd already proved to myself before that I can be successful, I had that to fall back on. Had I not have had my first business be successful, or had I not have done a very difficult degree or, achieved in my mind, then maybe I might not have bounced back. Number one. Number two, I'd say I'm optimistic. I'm an optimistic type of person. Even now, I feel like I can do anything. I have to rein myself back and go, no, actually, you can't do everything. But I think I am quite that type of person. And my dad's always said, pray for the best, assume the worst. And so I just protect my downside more. And so there was protection, even with the restaurant. The downside was that we weren't going to be destitute. We weren't going to be on the street. It was, yes, we would lose our life savings. But I also at the same time had my medical education business, which was keeping us afloat. And at the same time, I was working in the lab at the weekends. So we were quite close to opening up the clinic as well. So even though it looks terrible and we did lose a lot of money, it was painful, I'd had contingencies in place that if, we were going to be okay, we're not going to lose everything. And I would always say that to anybody, any business you want to start, never put yourself in a situation where you could lose everything, because you need to have enough in the tank to come back again for, in case it doesn't work out. I'd also say the big mistake I made here was because it was with Westfield, we had to use the most expensive materials, and that was a mistake. You always want to start scrappy, start cheap. That's how you start a business, and so we made that big mistake as well. So I think that's how we got out of it. It's just at the back of my mind, this could potentially have always failed, and even now, like I think. Any of my business at any point could potentially fail. Do I have contingencies in place? And I do. So, for example, my first property wasn't, let me go and buy my house. My first properties were, how do we buy high yield investments that if my business fails, that we have income, another stream of income. And that is unheard of. Like normally people will go and put all their money into their home, whereas we have a small home, but I wanted to make sure that we had another stream of income in case, business goes under. So I think it's just a different way of thinking and planning and preparing in case it happens.
And then with the clinics, obviously that was your main business for a while.
Yeah.
How did you apply those lessons to making sure that clinic was successful?
So clinics, I think that was a very lucky situation, because even now to this day, there still isn't a treatment designed for hyperpigmentation specifically for skin color, even to this day. Okay, and this was 10 years ago. So we were full, like we could not cope. I think our biggest mistake was that we were too full and we were working like overtime, and we didn't really need to put contingencies in place in case it didn't work, because we were working flat out. So I think we were lucky then. At the same time, I still had my medical education company at the beginning just to make sure that the clinics were going to be successful. So I think that's how we buffered the situation.
And what made you so passionate? Like obviously now people who see Instagram or your TikTok, whatever, they can see how much you care about skincare, but where did that come from? Why are you so passionate about skincare?
So my parents owned a cosmetic company called Pharma Clinics, and it was their lab in which I was learning. I became an apprentice in their laboratory before I built my own laboratory for the clinic, now for Skincare by Dr. V.
I can't help but think like Dexter's laboratory in my head here.
No, it's not that massive. Yeah. We actually don't need that much space, about 1,000 square feet just for the initial lab. And now we use contract manufacturers, because now we have to buy, 10,000 units at a time, whereas before, you're doing small batch. So it's different. You don't need like a massive space. It's more the information you need in order to make it happen. That's the difficult bit. So the beginning bit of opening a lab is very difficult, because you have to buy hundreds of ingredients, and they've all got different expiry dates, different kg. You don't use everything. You're going to have waste. You can't afford to lose too much money. That's the difficult bit with a laboratory. It has to be sanitized. But once you overcome all of that, it's amazing. You know, having your own lab is like, for me, is a playground. It's like I get to, for example, the other day, my follower said, Dr. V, we need something for pseudofolliculitis barbae, which is basically razor bumps that happen very often for Black males, because what happens is when they shave, they have curly hair. And when you shave at an acute angle, the hair becomes sharp and it re-pierces the skin, which then leads to an inflammatory response in the skin, which is painful and leads to hyperpigmentation. Again, to this day, there is no product that's been made specifically for Black men who have razor bumps. It doesn't exist, right? So as soon as I found that out, I went to my laboratories, I started ordering the ingredients that we needed. And now this weekend, I'm putting the ingredients together. I'm going to send it out to 20 of our followers to try, see if they like it. Then we proceed to clinical studies, etc. And then within 4 months, we'll be able to manufacture. And that's based on Wiconomics. That's my following telling me what they need. I've got the laboratory and the funds in order to make it happen, and I can manufacture the thing within 4 months. You know, It's a very lucky situation the way social media works now, and having people who trust you and want to help you and you know, want to be on the journey with you. I don't take any of it for granted.
With the clinics, we're always making our own products, or initially. So the products came first and part of the clinics, and then you said during the pandemic, the clinics had to close.
Yeah.
Now fully the products, right?
Yeah. Some of the products pharma clinics were making for me, some of the products I was making. And then when the clinic closed, during the pandemic, you know, remember there was like 3 lockdowns, but at the same time, we were paying for everything, you know, overheads. We didn't get furlough scheme. We didn't get any rent breaks or anything. So we were losing a lot of money. And it was a very scary time again, because at this point, this was my only business. So me and my husband had to sit down and have quite a difficult conversation, which was, what do we do now? And I said, if this carries on, like, we don't know. At this moment, remember at that point in time, we had limited data, limited information, partial information. We have to make decisions on this partial information. Plus, you're trying not to let your fear take over your decision-making process. So we decided what we have to do is we need to diversify. We need to sell globally. I'd started a little bit on Instagram and a tiny bit on YouTube, but we hadn't really gotten in, you know, hard. So we had to then set up on TikTok. I needed to make 5 videos a week on YouTube. I had to make content every.
You say you needed to, right?
Yeah.
So where did that come from? That desire? It's like,
well, we had to make money to survive.
For example, like a lot of people wouldn't necessarily think from products perspective, okay, I need to go to YouTube. What made you go down that path? And you mentioned before how
it makes sense. Like, say for example, you've got a skincare issue. What are you going to do? You're going to type it into Google, right? Like, I've got dark circles. What do I do? You're going to type into Google. Then what happens? You're going to have either blogs are going to come up or videos are going to come up from YouTube because of the way search engine works. And if you're at the top of YouTube, then you're going to listen to what that person is telling you. So it just makes perfect sense to me. And instead of teaching one person at a time, I can now teach 100,000 people at a time. So you're leveraging your time. And plus with product, you're delinking your time to money. So that's the other important thing is in the clinic, you can only see one person at a time. You know, you're selling your time for money, essentially. That's what you're doing. But it puts a cap on what you can earn by doing that. Whereas if you do product, it's scalable. You don't have a cap on what you can achieve, and you're highly leveraged because now I can teach 100,000 people at the same time instead of one. So it made perfect sense to me. That was like, fine, we've got this amazing tool. Like, I need to take full advantage. I would highly encourage anyone who has something to teach, if they like being on camera and they enjoy teaching, this is the time to be doing it, is to create your community, create your following, create people that you can improve their lives. Yeah, I think that the opportunities are endless. My mum wanted to do it. I told her to go for it. My daughter wanted to do it. I told her to go for it. Like, I don't tell anyone to go for it.
And what's interesting is you mentioned earlier how you're not of the kind of the native generation, right, of people who grew up on social media, right? You said you didn't have Facebook or university.
We had the Kodak. Do you remember the Kodak? You don't even remember because you're like...
Yeah, when I was a kid, when I was a baby. Yeah,
okay,
so... Make you feel old there.
I'm a decade older than you. Yeah, so back then there was no Facebook. So Facebook happened, I think, like when I got married. I was 25 when Facebook arrived. So imagine guys who are growing up with Instagram now, for them it's normal. Just, I want to go to this club, or I want to go to this restaurant. What are people wearing? Let me Instagram it and see what people are wearing. You know, we were calling like, so what are you going to wear? What are you going to do? So it was just a complete different era. So then to figure out right now, you need to get good on this platform. You need to be able to add value to people's lives. You need to be interesting. How do you even film Like, are you going to be comfortable putting your body on camera? I don't know. And how do you edit it? All these were new skills. And you can do it if you have a growth mindset. If you go, I can achieve anything. If tomorrow there's a new platform, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to read a book on it, watch some videos on it. I'll figure it out. If you have that kind of mindset, you will overcome it. But if you have a fixed mindset and you go, no, that was never part of my era. That's another generation. We don't do TikTok. Then you're losing on a massive opportunity. But also, when it comes to your children, you're not going to be able to relate to them. So a big reason why I can talk to my daughter, like things that she sees on TikTok, on my TikTok, we can relate to it. I can actually watch her face, see what she liked about a video and even tweak it to her liking. Whereas I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't in that mindset in order to do it. So even though we didn't grow up with it, I think we can adapt to anything if we want to.
And look, with your own TikTok strategy and your social strategy, now like you're quite famous for going into different shops and analysing what the ingredients are and whether they're good or bad. Where do those kind of ideas come from?
Our followers. So I call our people called my Dr. V Stock family, and they just tell me what they want. Literally what product they want, I will make it. What videos they want, I'll make it. And then I get to do a poll. So for example, with my book that we launched, we conducted the largest ever polls conducted on skin of color. Thousands of people responded to these polls, and that data then went into these books, and now we've sold thousands of copies of these books. So because we have access to hundreds of thousands of people, we are able to collect data and create products that tailor specifically to what they want, with the ingredients they want, at the price point they want. And, it's all come because of social media, really.
And like, in those early days when you didn't have much of a following, how is it then? Because obviously then you have to try to work out how am I going to get people engaged? How am I going to get people to care about what I'm doing? I'm another person on social media. What makes me stand out?
Correct.
How did you plan it at those early days?
It changes every month, like which platforms I'm performing best on. At the moment, I'd say TikTok I'm performing the best on, which is really shocking to me. But ultimately, the one that I love the most is probably still going to be YouTube, because YouTube long form content are for people who really have a problem and a need that they are dying to learn about. They want to know the in-depth nitty-gritty of that condition or that issue. And so it's a different type of person you're going to meet. The questions they're going to ask you are going to be more in-depth, and they probably would have watched quite a few of your videos and bought your book and invested. So I personally think, yes, do TikTok if you are starting. It's fine, but don't forget, think of it like, imagine someone was walking down the road, right? TikTok is a little bit like you don't know what you're going to see. And it's like, you're going to find it interesting. You might even watch 10 of them, but are you going to go and be engaged with that person? It's kind of like a funneling mechanism. It's a good way of getting to millions of people quite quickly. But long-term strategy, if you do want to get into social media, think about YouTube. And I know it takes the most amount of time, but then guess what? Because there's such high barriers to entry, i.e. your time, not everybody's doing it. Whereas TikTok, it's probably 10x the number of people on YouTube making content.
It's, for example, my background, right, with the Medium account. So people who don't know, Medium is like the long-form version of Twitter. And the biggest people on Medium have got maybe like a few 100,000 followers.
Yeah.
But each of those is paying members, which is a huge difference. It's much more investment.
Of course.
And if you compare that to somebody who's going to sit there and read an article, which you generally consider a lot of people don't really like to read that much anymore, things like that, they're way more invested in you than, say, seeing a TikTok or reading a tweet. And that's where sometimes people mess up, because they say, look at that overall big picture number of, I've got this many views. And 1 million views for a TikTok versus 1 million views on a YouTube video is totally different.
Totally different.
And it's saying things are impressions on LinkedIn versus an article being read. And it's the thing that I see, like a lot of people mess up because they're trying to compare two things that aren't the same.
Correct. Apples and oranges.
Yeah.
But also, what are you trying to achieve? That's the other big question, is what is your end goal here? Is it to have as many eyeballs as possible? In which case, just do TikTok. Don't do anything else. You're going to get the most number of eyeballs there. But are you trying to teach something? In which case, you need to be on YouTube. Or do you have something that's like a restaurant or something that's aesthetically gorgeous and an experience, and you really want people to see it on a daily basis? Then you would do Instagram. So pick the area that is going to serve your needs, because not everyone can do everything. It's exhausting. I do 3 platforms, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't recommend it for everybody. Pick the one that is going to give you the outcome that you're looking for.
And what's interesting as well is most people on YouTube or TikTok, these places, so many of them are thinking about that as a way to make money themselves, like through those platforms, whether it's YouTube for the program, Google Ads, things like that. Whereas what you're doing that's different is that you're using that as a lead generation for your business in more of that way, where you can offer things unbiased for free and just getting that trust with people, right? And sometimes what people are very quick to do is to kind of use that trust to then try and sell other people's products very quickly. And I think that's the way a lot of people think about it, whereas the better way to do it in the longer term is what you're doing, right? So create your own products. If you can sell other people's products using your brand, then you're making them money. If you're advertising, right? So for your Instagram platform, you're advertising, people are paying you £1,000 per post. Then the person paying you must be thinking, I can make more than £1,000 from that post. Otherwise, it's a waste of money, right? Yeah. And if you make your own products, then instead of that other person getting all of that delta, you get it yourself. Yeah. And that's a smart way to think about it in many ways, right? And if you start constantly selling other people's products, you start damaging the trust you have with your people, right? Yeah. But at the same time, you're leaving money on the table.
I do. So I'm one of the few influencers who don't accept sponsorship for anything. And I've had blank checks from like the big companies, and I said no, because the second I take that money, how do you know what I'm telling you is correct or not? As much as you may even like be invested in me and you've watched me every day, and you've watched me, my kids and everything, how do you know if I really love that thing or not? And I'm sure lots of influencers do love them. And there's not any criticism on people who do accept the money, because, you know, it's hard work putting a following together. So I get it. It makes complete sense. But for me personally, if I was my follower, I would want to know that everything I'm telling you there is no money behind it. There's no other incentives, and is purely coming from love. And I want to be able to feel that, and I want to know it. So that's the following that I want to create. That's my ethos, but I'm not judging anybody else for the way that they have done it. Because honestly, creating your own product is not a small thing. You know, my lab cost me hundreds of thousands of pounds to put together. Every time I make a product, it's thousands of pounds just for R&D. So it's not like something that, you know, 13-year-old can just go and do. It's a very difficult process to get right. And also you could spend all that money and go through R&D and still fail, and now you've lost, and now you're in a hole. So it's really easy to say, like, just go make a product. And in my head, I think it's really, let me go make a product. But the reality is, anything that you do other than white labeling is gonna take a lot of time and a lot of money, a lot of resources. So yes, there's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
I think it's also a long game versus short game, right? So if you have the money to invest and create your own products, then you can go for the long game straight away. But a lot of people don't have that, right? Correct, and that's where they can do the shorter game. But it's making sure you don't see the short game as the long game, because then you're always dependent on other people's brands. You're always dependent on other people, right? Because once you've got your own product, you still need to be dependent on people because you need them to buy your product. But it's more in your control, and you can make sure that you're giving a product which you believe in, rather than needing like, oh, okay, I need to make money this month to pay my mortgage. Do I accept this person that I don't really believe in or not? And in the long term, you don't want to be in that position. But at the same time, in the short term, you can understand why people do that, because it makes sense. And it's also a lot of people are doing this on the side of their jobs and things like that. And it's a different game in the position where you are, where it's your full-time income, you've got a family, all these different things where you can invest, you can play that long game.
You're right. I like it. Short-term versus long-term game. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things a lot of creators and people on YouTube, TikTok, whoever need to think about is that, do you want to be doing what you're doing now in 5 years' time? Or if not, like, what are you kind of doing to sow the seed for that future where you are more in control?
Agreed. Like, taking on from that point, I actually think a lot of us are quite reactive, and we almost on a day-to-day are living based on what's going on around us. I think a lot of us don't strategize and think, okay, 12 months from now, what do I want my life to look like? 5 years from now, what do I want my life to look like? And really get into the nitty-gritty of it. Like, do you want to be in a relationship? If so, who would that person be? Or where exactly would you live? And what would your house look like? And what would you be doing on a day-to-day basis? You know, like, really map out your life. I'm a big strategist when it comes to my own life, and I would definitely advocate it so that you're not a victim of what's happening around you.
You've set yourself up for the next question, you know that, right?
Oh, gosh.
So usually I don't ask people what's their 5-year plan, because people don't know. But I'm going to ask you now, because you say you know what your 5-year plan is. So where do you want to be in 5 years' time? Where do you see your products being? Where do you see Dr. V being?
Do you know what? The rate of growth has blown my mind. I would love to say that I think linearly, I'll have this many million followers and I'll, be having this many products in 5 years. But the rate of growth is exponential. And so whatever number I'm going to give you, I truly believe will be 10 times that number. So what I'm going to, I actually have to flip it on itself. And what happened for me was, the most important thing for me was financial abundance and independence. And then the second thing for me, very important for me, is giving back. So actually where I see myself in 5 years is probably giving the majority of what I have away and getting maximum bang for my buck, meaning I want to help the most number of people with the resources that I have. I'm probably going to be focusing more on girls and children because that's it's an incubator at that point. And if you... we can talk about the patriarchy as much as you want, but we've had our own conversation on the patriarchy. But yeah, I'm probably going to be focusing a lot more on helping and educating girls and doing everything I can in that space. I've got some really exciting projects that I can't talk about yet, but yeah, I think that's where I'm going to see myself 5 years from now. So it's not really going to be a financial goal because I feel like, touch wood, I'm happy with the way the work is going and business is going. But now I just want to take that money and put it back into the community and back into children.
Are there any exciting projects you can share that are coming up soon?
Oh, there's some really big ones, but I can't really talk about it yet until I've hashed out all the details. And, I don't want to say something and then it doesn't happen. So I don't want to set myself up for failure. Yeah, I think I'm just going to talk about it every month as we go along, basically.
Okay, so for this month then, what have you got exciting?
So this month we worked on food banks. So this was really exciting, actually. I'm working with Sufra this month. So I don't know if I told you, my money that I make from YouTube ads goes to charity. So over the winter months, it was pretty hard in the UK. And so I focused on food banks. And I went there yesterday just to see how it all worked. Usually you go and you just donate food or you donate money, but you don't actually see how it worked. And, there's this real peace there where just people are just, I don't know, it's this energy and just so much love. You can feel it in the air. It's almost palpable. I was telling my daughter about this and she really wants to go, and I was telling all my friends and everyone wants to go and help. And it's just, I think a lot of us want to help. I think a lot of us, it's inside us that we want to do something and it makes us feel good. And so this is what I try to do, is to try and shine a light on Sufra to show this is what you would expect to do. This is what you would do when you go, it's not a scary place. This is what is going to happen. It's a safe place for your kids to come and help too. And that was my goal for this month.
Okay, so it's going to be time for the quick fire questions now.
Oh no, can we not?
Okay. So the first one is, who are 3 British Asians that you'd love to shout out that people listening right now should be getting in contact with or following?
Okay, so I'd say Shivani, my niece actually is my first one. She's the one that got me on TikTok. And I think it's really important for us to listen to people younger in our families. They often know more than we do, especially when it comes to social media. So she really got me onto the TikTok. So big shout out to her. The second one, I would say Omar and Sachin. Both of them have been my photographers and videographers for all my events, all my campaigns, shoots, everything. I rely on them so heavily. I think they're incredible, just such amazing people to work with. So shout out to them. And of course, Anisha, who does all my events. She is, you find some people in life who have the same energy levels as you, and they just work at the same level as you. And they just, you just make magic happen together. And every time we sit down, I feel like magic happens. So for me, Anisha's a big one. But there's so many as well. And you just limited me to 3. I think my mum would be really angry if I don't say her as well. My mum's amazing.
Hi, Mum.
Hi, Mum.
So next one is, if people listening right now who want to reach out to you and they're looking for help or guidance, what should they reach out to you about?
So for me, skincare is my whole thing. Skincare for skin of color. There's a lot of products in the market that aren't great for skin of color. And as everyone knows, I'm non-sponsored and I will tell you the best and the worst on the market. So I think people do reach out to me with that. But actually, even better is if you tell me what the problem is, and then I will make a video on that problem. And so instead of just helping one, I can help hundreds of thousands. And that's always going to be my goal, is how, if your problem is oily, acne prone skin, let me make a video on that and I can help lots of people. That makes more sense in my mind. So tell me what videos you want me to make. That works out better for me than any other way of phrasing it.
And on the other side, is there anything that you're looking for right now that you could, you need help with?
Do you know what? I'm really blessed. I'm not going to lie. I think the the love I get from our following and from our family is something else. It's something else. They steer me in everything from products I need to make, mistakes I'm making. If I've done a faux pas or I have made a mistake or I've offended somebody, they will call it out so quickly and I can apologize really quickly. You know, it's, who else has that? I don't even, like, I'm so lucky that I feel like I don't even need to ask anyone for help because they're already helping me on a daily basis. I couldn't be more blessed, truly.
And then finally, have you got any final words for the audience?
I think just gratitude. I think I'm just so grateful and I will never take any of you for granted. And I thoroughly love what I do and I will continue to do it for as long as you want me to. So thank you so much for all your support.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us. And we don't think you realise how important you are. Because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes a world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission. And you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.